believe weather warfare is going on over your head every single day, stand by. As I said before, you'll believe it soon enough. In regard to the ongoing climate engineering assaults, the question of why, of course, and understandably, perplexes those that have not yet taken the time to investigate. Why is our climate being engineered? Though the answers are many and complex, the condensed version is this: for power and control. It's always about power and control. Investigate the U.S. document titled Owning the Weather. The full PDF is available online. Investigate the congressional documents, the presidential documents, the patents, the history of weather warfare and weather modification. It's all there for anybody who chooses to look. If you do so, you'll understand more. Then consider that after 70 years of weather warfare, tearing the climate system apart, and along with many other forms of anthropogenic damage to the biosphere, which many don't want to admit to, all of them impacting the climate system, much of the current geoengineering assault on our planet is for the purpose of masking the true damage already done to the climate system, while at the same time inflicting even more overall damage to the process. Again, this is the pharmaceutical mentality for planet Earth. How many examples do we have to see from the human race? This is the mentality of our modern industrial society, to very destructively try to treat symptoms while making the core of the problem far worse overall. This is the society we live in. Our children, who we owe our lives to, all of us, especially those who have made the decision to have children, we don't own our lives. We owe them to our children and to all the children of the once thriving, now dying planet Earth. So how's the global economy doing? I've talked about this in previous shows, most shows. For those that are still blindly fixed on the global economic facade, forget about it and move on to something that matters. The notion of endless global economic expansion was always a complete delusion. And it's not collapsing in some sort of cyclical fashion at this time. It's collapsing in a manner from which it will not return. We are not in some sort of cycle that's going to somehow magically bounce back. As stated in previous episodes, the implosion of the biosphere and nature's ability to produce will guarantee the already unfolding economic meltdown. And here's a few recent headlines on that front that we don't see from our corporate mainstream media, whose job it is to pacify us and put us to sleep. One headline: a whiff of panic, global meltdown progressing. Second headline: European bloodbath spills over to U.S. markets. Deutsche Bank and cocoa bonds collapse. Shares at record low. Another headline: European banks face major cash crunch. Another headline: Day of reckoning. The collapse of the too big to fail banks in Europe is here. Another: fear hits Japanese banks. Nikkei plunges. 10-year yield negative for first time ever. What's that mean? A negative yield. It means they're giving money away. They're paying you to take their money. This is the sign of a dying paradigm, absolutely in its death throes. Negative yield rates. And we're about to enter the same territory in the U.S. It's coming. Another headline: capital flight intensifies in Italy and Spain. Curiously, money flows into French banks. People are scurrying for any sort of safe cover. Good luck finding it. Two more headlines: the return of a crisis. Suddenly, banks everywhere are in deep trouble. Final headline: Sears Holding Corporation, that's SHLD, speeds up store closings after disappointing holiday season. Things are not rosy. We just have a massive population looking through rose-colored lenses. That's all. Trouble's not just coming, it's here. It's now. The downward slide will continue to accelerate on all fronts. No matter the season or occasion on the ground, the climate engineering continues to rain a chemical cocktail of contamination down in the entire web of life. And I would ask again, how long can we hold our breath? Of all the issues we face, why do I keep habitually coming back to this issue? And I'll cover more issues in a moment here. But again, no matter what happens to the economy, no matter what happens on many other fronts, we have to be able to breathe. How many other public health and welfare threats are being covered up by the very agencies and experts that are tasked with discovering and disclosing these threats? How many people do any of us know that actually behave in a way that truly corresponds with what they claim their convictions to be? How many? The sad, pitiful truth is this: the vast majority of the so-called public protection personnel are completely dependent on the paychecks and pensions and perceived illusion of personal security they receive from their paymasters. Such honorless individuals give willfully their blind obedience to these paymasters. Many would ask, who exactly is at the top of the money control chain of tyranny? And on that question, the answer is this: all roads lead to the central bankers, who can and are printing whatever amount of money they feel they need in order to carry out any and every form of tyranny imaginable. How many Americans are there who have any idea whatsoever about the monetary system and how it actually works? Under assault right now. It's not alarmism, it's not exaggeration. This type of weather modification puts out chemicals and toxins, some known, some not known. Many people who try to debate this issue, if they ask you why they should believe this is going on, we have film of it happening, end of the argument. That's it. There's no debate, no discussion. This is not speculation. Also indicative of different materials being expelled from different portions of the aircraft. So again, this amounts to weather warfare, period. The U.S. has historically engaged in weather warfare around the globe. This is historical fact. We have data going back to Vietnam, 1968, Project Popeye. 1976, UN passed resolutions forbidding weather modification in wartime. So again, this is not speculation. We live in a society that's been trained to shut down when they hear the word conspiracy theory. They've been conditioned pretty well. But the bottom line is this is the issue that can't be ignored any longer. People can ignore Kennedy, people can ignore false flag events like Vietnam and even whatever happened on 9/11, but this issue can't be ignored. When in the North State, for example, we took variants of different planes, the different configurations of spray apparatus. This is an ongoing experiment. There's likely many different configurations. We see aircraft trails that have different color composition. So this is an ongoing experiment of which we are all a part, like it or not. More configurations. Obviously, there's a whole lot of planes with a whole lot of tanks doing a whole lot of something. So this kind of footage should not be ignored. Clearly, these are what would appear to be passenger planes, most of them with windows. So there appear to be many different types of aircrafts involved in the spraying activities. This is what we have. Again, global geoengineering, the ever-changing experiment, and we are, again, part of that experiment. Russian scholar warns of secret U.S. climate change weapon. We have Russia engaged in this as well. We also have China, and this is one of the reasons why it's so hard to get any sort of mainstream coverage, because the big players are all involved up to their eyeballs. So that's one of the reasons the media coverage is so sparse, but it's coming. What do weather weapons do? They wreak havoc in countries without anybody knowing they're even under assault. In the case of floods, droughts, all of this is a form of weather weaponry and weather warfare. And there is no arguing that we are all a part of weather warfare when our climate is being impacted the way it is right now. Again, countries are...
Piece of agriculture is something I worry about even more than the previous info about autism and Alzheimer's.
Believe me, I'm seriously concerned with what I'm watching. As a wildlife biologist, I've been watching the ecosystem collapse. When you lose all your stream organisms, when you have aluminum overload in your streams, you're killing your microbial bacteria and you're disrupting the entire ecosystem. So it goes way beyond just a little bit of pollution. How did Monsanto know to create aluminum-resistant plants? I don't think I've heard anybody ask that question. Okay.
Insects. I've done studies in Siskiyou County. They're at 20% of normal. The aquatic insects basically made a nosedive in 2006 to about 20% of normal. So far this year, I've sampled 200 trout stomachs. 98% of them are empty. So sorry about the trout fishing, fellows. The mayflies, stoneflies, dipterus, and caddisflies are damn near gone. The terrestrial sampling is down to about 20% of normal, except for pest species like ants. We're seeing a loss of the major bird species, and as the gentleman said, the ecosystem is unraveling, and Audubon's been telling you that for years.
The materials that are going into the environment right now, aluminum oxide nanoparticles and barium nanoparticles, these just happen to be the same materials that they use in nanothermate explosives. And so when this stuff settles down out of the air into the environment, it is small enough to be absorbed through the root structure of the trees in the forest. And so when there's a forest fire, and there will be a forest fire, those fires burn dramatically hotter. The point is that the cost of firefighting, the cost in the healthcare system have nearly doubled in the last 10 years. The amount of acreage is lost because of fires. The impact on human health is dramatic.
I personally tested water and aluminum, and I found aluminum had 47 times the normal expected amounts. Strontium had 10 to 20 times the amounts. Barium was 20 times. This is what the stuff looks like here. I collected, it looks, most people just think it's a cobweb, but I tested it. It has outrageous amounts of barium, strontium, and aluminum, but they destroy the sample, so I'm not letting this get away from me.
You know, these tests are international in scope. We're seeing this all over the world, guys. Okay, pH of acid soils is 20 times more alkaline. The aluminum in the soil has doubled in the last 10 years.